Distributed. Nice. Very nice.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Leprechaun Alley. We are here in Long Island. And before I get started, we're here to do live readings. And in the meantime, we will also discuss other astrology topics if we don't have anybody in the room to read for.
We will continue a discussion on astrology.
So is there any house
Just as a
cleaning?
Reminder, to tell all the audience, my name is Michael Perillo, Michael G, and this is Carrie.
My name is Ray Carey Perillo. And the sounds that we use, the Michael G or the Ray Carey Perillo, those are the syllables for our birth nakshatra. So the nakshatra system comes from India. It is based on your moon sign at your time of birth. The nakshatra, there are 27 nakshatras, 2.5 per sign. And each nakshatra has 4 segments called padas. So when you know your birth time, based on where the moon is located, and also based on the section of the nakshatra that it's located in, you will get a syllable which is used for in naming the children. The people that use that system, they will use the syllable and incorporate it into the name. So it's just a nice little way you can kind of add it to your name as a syllable, and it just really is supportive in terms of vibrationally helping us just be more of who we really are.
How we derive at these other names will be discussed in future broadcasts, in which we will start getting into the Jyotish system of astrology. Jyotish originates in India, and it predates most of our history. Some say it's 60,000 years old, some say it's several thousand, 100,000 years old. In any event, we will go on with our modern astrology, which is more applicable for daily use for everyone. And at that level, we might start to discuss, just to give you an idea of how complex astrology can get. We'll start with discussing my chart and Carrie's chart.
And what those implications could be. Before we get started, I just want to make sure that I'm doing this. By the way, we do have to say this is for entertainment purposes only. Get rid of the legalese. And I just want to give a shout out to these channels that have really helped me so much, really inspired me and motivated me to really get us up and moving and open our own channel. So I want to give the first plug to Linda G, the Comanche Psychic. Thank you so much for referring people to our site. Black and Orange Tarot, Psychic Violetta, Sterling, Celtic Tarot, The Way of Positive Change, Intuitive View, Third Eye Champagne, and Joni Patry. And also we wanted to share with you, if any of you do happen to be in New York or Long Island or come here, our favorite restaurants. My sister-in-law, his sister's restaurant is Il Bacetto. It is an Italian restaurant, more of a country Italian style. It's absolutely incredible, authentic cuisine. And our favorite cool little, what do you want to call, boutique restaurant that I like to hang out with is located here in Huntington called Be Organic. Wonderful, absolutely organic, fresh, incredible, really charming environment. Also, another restaurant that I would recommend is Sorella's, which is a combination of sushi and Italian. So also an excellent place to eat, and you can meet a lot of needs when you go there. And finally, our favorite cafe per se is the Golden Globe. Michael and Peter are excellent. The food is outstanding and the menu is incredible. The ingredients are fresh and I'm just so blown away by their recipes. Okay, so
we'll start.
Okay.
Well, we want to start with you with sun sign and Sagittarius.
Sure, if you want to start with that.
Right. To give an idea of how you approach a chart and begin to understand the components that comprise human behavior, attitude, tendencies, compulsions, things that go on every single day and in every part of our lives. Carrie is born in the sun sign called Sagittarius. Now, we have to understand astrology properly. When we call someone by
Hi,
this,
Angelita. Welcome.
oh, we have
Oh, it's
someone.
Angie. It's our girlfriend from. Yeah, she's the tiger. She's the Gemini tiger, metal tiger. She was here visiting us from the last session.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Hi, welcome.
What's her questions?
Oh no! Well, when she has a question, she'll ask.
Oh,
but she's
okay.
just here for the information.
She's here for the information. Good. So, getting back to what I was beginning to express, that when we deal with sun signs, what must be understood is that this is a small segment of our personal makeup. We make a big deal about, most astrologers make a big deal about the sun sign. And everyone goes around believing that they are nothing more than their sun sign. In other words, Aries being the beginning of the zodiacal signs, Taurus, Gemini, and so forth. That is only a small part. And when we say that Sun is in Sagittarius, what this means is that during the months of November, December, beginning around November 23rd up to about December 22nd or 21st, we have the Sun is seen to be in the constellation of Sagittarius. This constellation that we see is what we observe as the Sun travels, from our appearance, it appears that the Sun
hi, Liz. Welcome. Liz is here too. Liz V.
Okay.
She had her granddaughter is she was a Taurus year of the metal cat, right? Yeah. So
Okay.
she was asking you about her granddaughter.
Okay, so we have questions?
No, not yet. They're just here, so we're welcoming
Okay.
them. So when they come in, they come over on the chat room,
Okay,
and that's when
very-
you see him.
very
So
good.
he can't see as well as I can.
So, getting back to how it is that we call this Sagittarius from November 23rd to December 21st, and that is that when we observe the Sun through our path around the Sun, but it appears that the Sun is moving around in its own orbit, and we see the Sun in different parts of the segment of the universe. During the period that I have just described, November to December, we see the Sun appear to be in the constellation of Sagittarius. And so someone who was born in that period from November 23rd or 22nd, 23rd, you have to look up each year because the Sun does not move precisely according to our clocks and calendar. But it's about that time, November 22nd, 23rd, till the December 21st, sometimes at the beginning of the 22nd of December.
You know, Michael, I was thinking right at this moment, because I am kind of close, but not that close. I'm in early November, and I thought it might be a good time for you to discuss what the meaning of cusps are, because there's a lot of confusion. I'm a cusp. What does that mean? How does that?
Well, I would have liked to have described the sign first, but we'll deal with the cusp since Carrie brought it up.
When
someone is born near the signs that either come before it, in the case of Carrie's chart, she's a Sagittarius, but she's born for less than 4 degrees after the sign Sagittarius began. Now, a cusp has meaning up to 6 degrees of difference. So that means that the last 2 degrees of Scorpio, let's say the 29th and 28th degree of Scorpio, going on to the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th degrees of Sagittarius, this area is considered a cusp because there is a strong influence going on before and after. So some of Scorpio may still be felt, and Sagittarius will start to become felt. And it is known as the cusp. But let's understand, the Sun, in Carrie's case, is Sagittarius.
Yes.
So in spite of the cusp, she is a Sagittarian. Even if she were born on the very first day of Sagittarius, which would have been around the 22nd, 23rd, she would still be a Sagittarian, even though she's so close to Scorpio. So it is a mistake for people to think that because they're in a cusp, that they might be the other sign, the one before or the one that's coming. And a lot of people that I have encountered over the years, and we're talking about some close to 50 years of my experience with astrology, People keep telling me, oh, well, I'm born on the cusp, and therefore I don't have my sun sign is not all that is cut out to be. That is not true. Given that the sun is only a small segment of your chart, so why make the sun so important, whether it's on the cusp or not? And we'll be able to explain this even further as we go on with these these broadcasts. That we will start to show how a chart should be read properly and how not to get all excited about one position or another. And this is where the mistake of many astrologers, they make such a big thing about one thing. They get stuck on their own interpretation of something and they specialize in a particular area and blow it out of proportion. Astrology is complex and nothing will take over everything. No, there are no positions in your astrological chart that dominate the rest of the chart. They're all integrated as parts of the whole the whole part. It's just like the body. If you have a beautiful face, doesn't mean you have a beautiful body. Or that if you have nice eyes, doesn't mean your lips are nice. Because everything has to be taken in together. And that is the hard part of astrology. So you want to say something more about Sagittarius before we get more into
right. Yeah. So we'll go on with the Sagittarius, but I just thought, so would it be fair to say, I think in terms of the cusp and the previous sign, really, it plays a supportive role, but we're still reading from the sun.
And keep in mind, as we talk about this cusp, keep in mind that every individual is born with all 12 signs in their chart. All 12 signs must be accounted for, and it is ridiculous to describe only the sun sign, although the sun sign has a very powerful effect on creation, because on Earth, without the sun, there'd be no life. So we know the sun is incredibly effective in many of the ways we behave and how we grow. The sun gives us energy, it gives us life. So that's just another way of looking at how you can take the sun and make it very important, but it's not the end of your chart. So you want to say something about Sagittarius?
Oh, I guess so. So, Sagittarius. Well, so when we're looking at the sign more, I'm a Sagittarius sun, but I'm actually born at 29 degrees of Scorpio. So my ascendant is Scorpio. Yes.
You're born at 20, you're dealing with Jyotish now.
No. I mean, 29 degrees Scorpio is my ascendant in Western.
Oh, your ascendant.
Yeah, my ascendant.
I thought we were talking about Sagittarius.
Well, we are talking about this, about Sagittarius.
Well, I didn't know that you moved on into the, okay.
Oh, so I was just qualifying. Yes.
I thought we were going to describe Sagittarius.
Yes.
Well, one thing at a time. Sagittarius first. Okay. We're going to deal with the sun signs. This you see right away. Carrie is letting you know another very significant point of astrology, which is the ascending sign. But I think we will move on just to describe a little bit of each sign now, and we will have a broadcast where we will get into each astrological sign very thoroughly. But for now, at the beginning of these sessions, we want to just show you an example of how things are when we look at sun signs, and we thought we'd use ourselves so that you can study for yourselves the way we behave and see if not, the sun sign does come through. So in the case of Carrie, she's born in the sun sign of Sagittarius. Sagittarius happens to be the 9th sign of the zodiac, beginning with Aries, which by the way is my sun sign. Aries is the first sun sign, and then we move along to Taurus. After Taurus, we have Gemini, then Cancer, then Leo, then after Leo, Virgo, followed by Libra, followed by Scorpio, and the 9th sign, Sagittarius. So why do we say it's the 9th sign, and why is that important? Because in astrology, there are also what they call houses. And the houses are each of the stations that I've just described. They're ruled by each of the 12 sun signs. So the 9th sign rules higher education, long travels, higher knowledge. Sagittarius is responsible. These are things that have
Good
been...
question, Liz.
There are questions?
I'll answer.
So in astrology has been a science that has been studied by the ancients for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years. This information didn't just come from out of the blue. Astronomers like to put down astrology because their scientific approach, but astrology also requires a certain mathematical precision. And
Yes.
without that mathematical precision, you cannot practice astrology.
Astrology, it really is, it's a structured way, it's a structured analysis of the subjective. That's what this really is. And what we have as a whole in humanity been striving for is trying to put science together with metaphysics, and we're very close, but we're still separate worlds.
I want to add to this word subjective.
Yes, okay.
What Carrie is talking about is the way an astrological chart is being interpreted. It is highly subjective. However, the mathematical aspect of astrology is very scientific. There
Right.
is nothing subjective about the science. If you cannot calculate movements and speeds of the planetary,
Right.
let's call it the celestial bodies, you cannot do an astrological
That's
chart.
absolutely correct.
It's only when we interpret, and that is where the failure
Right.
comes in when astrologers try to interpret astrology. What you get for the most part is people who have read a book on astrology, and then they make a big case about it, and they add to it their subjective feeling about astrology. And that spills in with too many astrologers.
So, right. So, in terms of interpreting the subjective, what's important, because the subjective is just as important as the objective. They just have different metrics. And what's important about, because the thing that we want to know the most about are the things that we have impressions about, that we have feelings about. Those are the things that mean the most to us, things that, how big is my car? How does the gas work? All of those things. We're not going to call an astrologer and ask them, if they should get a particular type of gas tank or a particular type of engine for the car. That's not what astrology is for.
But subjective readings are only good insofar as they're able to constantly keep in mind the actual scientific, mathematical value of these signs and
Absolutely.
their positions.
Absolutely.
One can become subjective, and this is a very dangerous area of astrology because
I don't consider it dangerous.
If you can remain mathematical, then you can probably provide subjective aspects of that reading that closely align to what will always remain as constant. The problem with most astrologers, they begin to read and they deviate from what is constant in the truth of each sign. So subjective is only as good as the individual who is
Right.
providing that information.
Yes. Right, because part of this, a big part of what is subjective, meditation is subjective, developing our character, all of those things live in the realm of subjectivity. And those are the things that we have to develop within ourselves to have really good discipline and facility and good faith in terms of reading and interpreting a chart. Psychologists, the same thing, tarot readers, psychics, all the same thing, all in these subjective realms. We have to have as much integrity as we can develop within ourselves.
In order for anyone to read subjectively and come close to the truth, they should really be people who have learned to meditate, people who have learned to study many, many different areas of information where they become more worldly, and then they can start seeing how many things gather together to create humanity. So subjective reading requires someone that remains broad in their thinking and doesn't fall into a favorite feeling about certain things.
Right. So now Liz V has an interesting question. She wants to know, why is Aries the first sign when it starts at the end of March, beginning of April?
Well, this happened when the Romans changed the calendar. There was a period of time before the Roman Empire became what it became, that the first sign was Aries, and in fact the calendar began with March, what we call March now, before the Romans came in and started to reorder everything.
Gregorian calendar,
Otherwise, March is really the planet Mars, and we consider Mars, even now, we're beginning to see Mars as perhaps the planet from where we originate. We'll get into that kind of discussions when we get into further and
We
further.
like freaky stuff too. We're
Right.
all over it.
Well, we'll make good cases for why
Yeah.
some of these things are real, are really true, or have a merit to be studied and understood. So Aries is the first sign because it was determined by ancient astrologers that this is when everything began. This
Right.
is when the
Kind of the
rams.
beginning of history, like
Right.
Moses represents
Well,
the Aries.
Right. And
Yeah.
and it's in nature, but remember, astrology was developed, at least this is what is said about astrologers. I personally believe that we had super high knowledge eons of years ago. But we're, and after 5,000 years coming out of the Dark Ages and the supposed caveman age, which I disagree, there was no such thing. Cavemen did not go back 5,000. We don't go back to 5,000 years. However, in any event,
Yeah.
with the observation
Yeah.
from the sheep gatherers and herders, they noticed that when March came, what we call March now, what they determined was Aries, the first month, was when the rams came out of the mountains and they copulated with the
Ewes.
ewes, and life started again. And
Not
it
the
was
me's, the ewes.
the life began brand new. So Aries was considered the brand new sign, or the sign of birth, or the beginning, the child. And that is how come Aries is the first sign. So if it's screwed up by calendar, it's because of the Romans.
Right. Yeah, it's all based on the movement of the planets and the Earth's axis. So the Jyotish, for example, they use a sidereal zodiac that is based on where they believe the planets.
Well, we should describe what's the difference between sidereal and
Okay.
what we do.
All right, go ahead.
All right, so there are, at the present time, the major differences between sidereal and tropical. Tropical means the earth, or it means where the water is, or, for instance, human beings are considered tropical. All animals are considered tropical. They have water is the important thing for them to grow in, and certain amount of heat and all of that. This is tropical. So when we say tropical, we mean concerning the aspects of the earth, on how you divide the earth in, let's say, houses or stations. Sidereal, the zodiac, is when we look at the universe by looking at the sun as it appears to travel around the Milky Way.
The galaxy, yeah.
The galaxy Milky Way.
Yeah, right.
Then it appears, as we look at the sun, and we only are concerned with the plane where our equator stretches out, and wherever it goes, whatever constellations it makes contact with, the sun is seen in those 12. There are other constellations that are south and north of the equator. And they are also, we will at some point get into those other 12 signs, because we are also affected by them. But for the most part, astrologers decided that the most powerful influence came when the sun was being completely facing one of the constellations, the 12 constellations that are used. So this is how we came up with 12 constellations, because we see the sun travel across 12 constellations as it goes around its own orbit. The sun, the solar system also has an orbit that we hardly ever talk about. It moves around the Milky Way, and these are called great ages. But we will not complicate this session any further than to just start discussing Sagittarius. So when we look at the sign Sagittarius, we're looking at divisions of the zodiac, and each part of the zodiac is given certain values that they dominate certain qualities. But these are always impelled, not compelled. In other words, the tendency is to go in that direction, but that doesn't necessarily mean we move in that direction. So Sagittarius is responsible for higher knowledge. It is one of the 3 fire signs. Aries, Leo are the other 2 fire signs. Sagittarius happens to be called the sign, the fire of knowledge, because it occupies the 9th house, which is higher learning. So we get philosophers, we get lecturers, we get people with deep scholarly qualities, Chomsky.
Yeah, Noam Chomsky
Noam
is good. Angie, you might actually remember William F. Buckley, also
Right, right,
Sagittarius.
right.
That's a conservative commentator. Noam Chomsky is more of a left-leaning commentator. But you see the same qualities of Sagittarius in both.
They have a presence of knowledge. Sagittarius is also considered the sign in which what occurs is the long travel. So if you're going to take a long travel, you might want to take a look at the Sagittarius aspect of your chart.
Right.
Keep in mind, all 12 signs belong to everyone. It's the only difference is the way they come about. What house are they occupying in your chart? Because the houses change as time goes on rather quickly. The sun moves 1 degree per day. The moon moves 2.5 degrees per week. I think it's per week.
Oh, geez, what am I
Yeah.
thinking? That
Because it's the moon's in 1 month it has traveled 28.5 degrees.
yeah.
So I think it's one
I might
week.
have to. I think it is too, but I have to refer to that.
2.5 days. 2.5 days is what the moon moves in. Okay. Well, we're trying to dig up some of the ancient
some of this we're just doing
information
on the spot. So
information that we have learned many, many, many years ago. But
deep retrieval
we
process.
will bring it all out properly. In any event, Sagittarius is also responsible for the rulership over all foods. They are the Epicureans of the zodiac. They rule over all forests. Sagittarius is half man and half horse, so he is still very much in touch with his nature, with his animal nature. They rule over all medicines, as Sagittarius is the sign of knowledge, so they rule over that. And as I said, higher education, so you'll find many philosophers and lecturers coming out of Sagittarius. They're also capable of being good at many things that require a deep knowledge, deep wisdom, because Sagittarians really do not look at the whole world from what they feel. They look at the world of what they can see. And
Right.
so Sagittarius has an expression in the zodiac as the sign that says, I see. And we will, as our casts go on,
right. Yes, I see.
we will describe so much more of every sign. We're giving it to you in parts so you can ingest these things a little at a time instead of trying to give you everything at once and then try to cover 12 signs.
Well, I have to tell you, so when Michael and I were talking when we were first getting together and I was in New Mexico and we were on the phone all the time,
Right.
he would hear me say, I see all the time. And
Right,
anybody
right.
that knows me knows that's my frame of
Right.
reference.
Right.
So really pronounced. And I also wanted to mention somebody interesting, because this is kind of an important thing to know about Sagittarian women. Tina Turner is a Sagittarius. She's in 1941. She's born year of the snake. And so what's so interesting, of course, is that she has this history of abuse. So Sagittarian women kind of have to watch out because we're forgiving and we're open-minded and we want to invite that fire of knowledge and wisdom and all of that. But we're too optimistic and we can delude ourselves in terms of what's okay and what isn't.
We should let the audience know that you brought in the year of the snake. This is a Chinese system, which we will also cover.
Which is what we do when we do live readings.
We will also cover, when we do live readings, we will be covering both your Western sign, which is the 12 signs of the zodiac that some of us are familiar with, and we will deal with the Chinese zodiac, which covers 12 years.
So I just wanted to add in reference to Tina Turner. So you see, as she went into Buddhism, she became very high-minded. She's an incredibly spiritual person, and that's what brought her out of her scenario. That's what brought her out of the situation. So a lot of Sagittarian women, I mean, it's true for everybody, of course, but yet Sagittarian women, our solution is almost always spiritual to overcome obstacles.
So having now just dealt with Sagittarius, you get an idea of a little of how to interpret this sign. And we gave you a reason why it occupies the 9th house, because everything begins with Aries and Sagittarius is the 9th sign. In any event, there are more things about the number 9 that we will not discuss today, because we will, from time to time, to spike up the interest in knowledge, we will be also discussing numerology as we go through the signs.
Yeah,
The
hopefully
best
we
way
can
to
like
teach.
get paired up with a good
Yeah, the
numerologist.
best way to
And,
teach anything is to give you examples of how they're working, either by using ourselves or someone who has called us, and then we start doing readings. And a lot of this will be repeated, or at least be explored further than we are in this moment, as we're just at the beginning of our presentations on podcast.
So, you know what I want to do now is I want to talk a little bit about Michael, who has an Aries sun. So we're going to discuss the Aries sun, and one of the things that's really interesting to talk about is the relationship. Since it's Michael and I here, we have an Aries and a Sagittarius relationship. So the Aries sun, the planet is ruled by the planet Mars, and
I forgot to mention how Sagittarius is ruled, but go ahead.
oh yes, and Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. So, and we're gonna circle back to this anyway because this is
Right.
going to be the primary
Our,
mode.
our more complete
right, for
readings
right now.
on these signs will include the rulers and many other things.
And even on down the line, what I'll do is I'll get some, with their permission, get some of my family members' charts up, and I'll kind of just look at them, and that way we can kind of go through the signs that
Or
way.
the people that call will,
Right.
will start to give
Right.
us more.
If you don't have anybody that you want us to read specifically for you, then we'll just kind of bring up different charts and discuss their relationships.
And we'll also add sometimes political leaders,
Oh, absolutely.
actors.
Yeah, we're
and
definitely going to
actresses.
get into it.
We'll mix it so that we
Right.
keep this very interesting and show the relativity of this information, which we call parascience. It's not a true science in the sense that what we call
Yeah.
true science is what we can measure in a test
the
tube,
material, right?
what we can
right.
measure in a laboratory. Astrology is beyond that.
Right.
It's not something that can be measured
Quantum
in a
physics is what's going to do the
Right.
job. That's what's
It
going to
can't
bring
be-
us back into
The astronomers bring everything down to their telescopes and their ability to draw maps and look at positions of things, but they have nothing to say about how they affect us, even though the weather people count 100% on planetary movements as they affect each other.
right.
And that is how they
Right.
can predict earthquakes, they
Right,
can
right,
predict rain,
Right.
they can predict snow. The Farmer's Almanac was always almost 100% accurate all the time. They always used astrology, and it worked. So how do you account for that? We will get into that more, that meaning of it more deeply as we go on.
So
But for the time being, Carrie will continue with her
well,
reading.
so one of the things that's interesting is just looking at the Aries and what the Aries, the word for, or the phrase for Sagittarius is I see. The phrase for Aries is I do.
I am.
I'm sorry. I made the mistake. Yes, sorry.
Right. Now, what she
I
is talking about is what is Aries here for.
Right.
Every sign has a
I
different
am.
thing to do. Sagittarius, for instance, is here to teach. Aries is here to do.
So he, by the way, he is the Western and Chinese astrologer, and I am the Jyotish. We both
Right.
are familiar with each other's crafts, but
Right.
he's going to be more knowledgeable
Right.
about.
So, but Carrie has a lot of interesting things to
yeah.
add, and I'm glad she's here because it helps me gather up other information that she stimulates in my thinking. So this is the way you're going to get a much more complete understanding of the science.
Right. So for Aries, Aries is in action all the time. They're in action, and you always see he has like a little head lean. Kind of, you'll
Right.
notice that in Alec Baldwin too. It's almost like the horns are too heavy for their head, so you kind of see that little lean to the side a little bit.
This is true of many Aryans.
Yeah.
If you look at the actors that are Aryans, you will notice that their heads are usually to the side. And it is said that because the Aries is one of its descriptions of Aries is that it is the ram that comes out of the mountains during the course of the spring. That the rams have very heavy heads, and Aryans tend to be large heads and heavy heads. And you'll see many, if not most, of the actors that you can actually see. There was a tendency with leaning their head. So it's not because we're sleeping or anything like that. It's just a tendency that we have that we're relating to our sun signs. So Carrie was telling you about me. Do you want to go on anymore?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, so I was trying to get rid of the phone. Yeah, so one of the things that I noticed, and this is kind of the fun. So as Michael speaks, and this is what the fun is for us, is in with each other's different vehicles that we use. I I get the energy, the Aries. I always joke and say they talk first or they shoot first and ask questions later. It corresponds to the dragon. It's like special forces, and I refer to the Sagittarius as they're like a healer warrior. And so, and I think about this like the reason, because that's what the centaurs are. They're healers. So the reason that they're archers is because you have to keep the enemies, you have to shoot them from far away because you're there protecting the hospital, because you're there performing
Well,
those.
in a way, it also represents the direction of truth.
Right, and the direction, of
The
course,
arrow is
all
being
healing,
shot
right, all
to the
healing
higher levels of
is realized through
existence.
truth.
They're shooting into space because this is where they know they originated. So it is a way of acknowledging that they are creatures of something universal, that they're beyond the earth. So they're archers. They're not shooting at a particular animal or anything. Their purpose is to shoot for knowledge. This is what the arrow represents.
So Michael has always been, and there are a lot of things that play into this, but he's very strong. He and I are actually the same height. He's a little taller than I am, like a half an inch.
Yeah, something like that.
He climbs trees, he
Oh.
moves boulders, he's built ponds, like
Published works.
incredible physical strength that he has.
I've also been involved in super planning and diagrams.
He's
and
in perpetual action.
writing books. I've done many different things. When you read about Aries, if you are inclined to want to pursue astrology,
they just keep going. So the thing is, I joke. I have to get this out. What I joke about with the Aries is that they got their head down, and the Sagittarius is there. You got to straddle
their heads up.
Right. You got to the Sag is like that.
Yeah,
you got to straddle the Aries back, pull their horns up, point them in the right direction, and let them go again. Right, and that's what you do.
Well, because
they're like little kids too,
because
right?
Because Aries is the child,
the innocent child,
where Sagittarius is the adult. He's the philosopher.
Right. The mutable signs kind of show up.
Because he sees, you'll notice that when Sagittarians are walking, they tend to have their heads tilted up as if they're looking up. And this is true too if you pay attention to people born the sign Sagittarius. So these are little things that you don't hear
Richard
from other
Pryor
astrologers.
is a Sagittarius. What was he? A dragon? He's a dragon. 1940.
He was a Sagittarius dragon.
He's another one that you see even when he does a comedy. Tina Turner, you'll see their heads are up and they're looking up. It's really interesting.
These are things that we will tell you that you won't see in most other readings from others, because the others want to simply go over the old stuff, like Aries is a conqueror. He doesn't look back. He's always rushing forward. That's just a small segment of what Aries is about. Aries is also the magician. He is also the creation force.
Right.
He is the one that gives rise to the other 11 signs. So he's complicated.
Yes.
And he is...
The child is the father in a way.
He is a performer. Incredible. He is a doer, but at the same time, he's also fairly intellectual. He is pondering all the time. He represents in China the dragon. But we'll go into this deeper. We don't want to get bogged down in this session over just
so those are just basically some quick and dirty things to discuss about our sun sign.
So do we have anybody that has questions?
Oh, let me see. We have 2 joiners. If they don't, hold on a second. Oh, nope, they're just listening. They're just here listening. So what else do you want to look at? Do you want to take a peek at?
Well, we were talking about Sagittarius.
Well, you know what? Why don't we? I think it would be a natural place. So, Michael, we'll discuss your Mars. I think a natural lead-in starting out with
the planet that rules. We didn't deal with Jupiter. We just dealt with you as a sun sign, Sagittarius.
Oh, right. But I was saying we can go, or if you want, we can go back to Jupiter.
So you want to give a little description of Aries? You gave a description of me, but
well, the brief description of Aries. It just
you did cover quite a bit of it.
Yeah, it just represents it's energy, it's virility.
It's the beginning. It's a childlike aspect of consciousness.
Sexual magnetism, like raw male, mamma mia.
In any event, it represents the beginning of all things. But let's take another aspect of astrology. Do you want to start covering the rulers?
Well, I thought, oh, do you want to? I was thinking we could look at where your Mars is, or what do you want to do?
Well, I think the rulers are more pertinent to the signs, and when we start going into the houses, that gets more
Okay,
complex.
okay. So the ruler, right? The planetary ruler of Aries is Mars.
Well, we started with you, but all right, you want to do Mars first?
Or no, Jupiter. Jupiter. We'll do Jupiter.
All
Yeah.
right, so Jupiter is said to be the planet that rules Sagittarius. It also rules Pisces. Let's keep in mind that a lot of astrologers are beginning to use the planets Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto.
Right.
These planets take too long for them to be really effective.
They're generational planets.
To see them as effective consequences in human behavior.
And
Since
we're going to have a pretty metaphysically
Uranus takes 7 years, we
sophisticated,
don't want to
audience
wait
as well.
7 years to figure out how a person is changing or affected. So we consider these Uranus taking 7 years, Neptune taking I think 14 years,
14.
and the Pluto taking 39 years to get through
Each
one
sign.
sign.
Right.
So they're generation plans. They're more properly used to look at how we behave as a society
Like the
over
boomers,
time.
right? The boomers would be, we never really could get that worked out, right? But the boomers are really about having the Neptune, their Neptune in Libra.
The
That's
Neptune
the
is being
generation that
expressed,
was
right? That was because Neptune was in Libra. But now we're going to only cover the planets as they affect us individually. So Jupiter rules Sagittarius
right.
and the sign Pisces.
Right.
Whereas a lot of astrologers are now saying Pisces is ruled by Neptune.
And Jupiter is a social planet.
Well,
And Saturn, they're social planets. They're not
right,
generational.
Right.
They're social.
Right, because they're Jupiter is the expanding planet.
Exactly.
And Sagittarius, one of the sayings of Sagittarius is that they want more.
Yes.
Well, Jupiter is the largest planet. And when we go to Pisces, they don't say more, they just encompass everything. So we see how the more still works through Jupiter. So we want to say something about Jupiter.
Oh, it's just a planet of expansion. It is the great benefic.
Right. It's considered very benefic. When you look at Jupiter, you're looking for what benefits you have or how Jupiter may aid a person's chart by being present at certain places, and usually will make light of negative things or enhance positive things.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of the priest of the chart as well, of the zodiac.
You could say that, yes. I would agree with that.
And also, you'll find these Jupiter personalities tend to be open, forgiving. A really good example of what like a Jupiter personality would be like is actually from the movie Elf. Of the personality of the elf. They're steady, they're supportive, they're expansive, they're compassionate. They particularly, Jupiter itself is always watching over women and children and animals. And so you'll see those personalities. You'll see that soft nature.
But let's keep in mind that when we see Jupiter, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be happy with Jupiter.
That's right.
Jupiter
expands.
It provides more.
Right.
If there's a negative tendency and Jupiter is there, we may get more negativity than we want. Vice versa, if there's a positive tendency, Jupiter will include or provide more of that. The easiest way to look at Jupiter is that it will indulge in higher and more continued qualities that it is effecting.
So a really good example, and I'm not going to go into my Vedic chart right now, but I want to just give you a really good example. Jupiter is located in my Vedic chart in my first house, and it is conjunct the moon in my first house. So what do you think that could mean? Well, certainly I can be gregarious and loving and compassionate and sensitive and all of those things. But the moon, guess what else the moon rules? Breasts. Guess what else Cancer is linked to? Jupiter. So I just went through, I went in remission last October. So I just went through an incredible bout with metastatic breast cancer, but it's right there in my chart. So So that's another way that Jupiter can affect you. So remember these energies and the directions that they go, those are the most important, and how those things are combined will give you a better picture of how those will play out in your life.
Well, now you mentioned that Jupiter is conjunct your moon.
Right. That would be in Vedic
We have
astrology.
to tell what that means.
Yeah.
Conjunctions mean that planets are
Oh, yeah.
close together, and they're considered conjunct up to 6 degrees apart. And the further they're apart, then the weaker it gets.
Right.
But being conjunct to the moon means what? That Jupiter is going to augment or make greater whatever the moon is doing.
Precisely.
If the moon is considered the emotional nature, and so Jupiter being close to the moon is going to strike that emotional quality. It's going to either aggravate it or pacify it. It's just going to be more. So if the person gets emotional, there's a tendency to become extremely emotional.
Yep.
Because Jupiter is there.
Mm.
At the same time, there are other qualities that the moon represents. It's the motherhood. It's about comfort. It's about nurturing. So this Jupiter is also going to increase those aspects.
And it's about sharing. It's
Right.
about distribution.
So
to
you
your
see
children.
how Jupiter can be positive and negative, and because it's closer to another planet, it will cause the other planet's qualities to become enhanced or increased. And that is how you begin to interpret a chart. This is just giving you the simplicity of it. It gets more complicated as you go around the 12 signs and as you go around the 10 planetary positions. By the way, 2 of those planetary positions, we call them planets, but they're luminaries. They're the sun and the
Right.
moon. But
Yeah.
we call them planets just so that we don't have to keep saying 8 planets and 2 luminaries. So we just call them planets. And those are the 10 that we have to describe as they interact to each other. And it gets more interesting when we start to look at what their aspects are. An aspect is the angles that they're near or the space that they're covering. And we just mentioned one of the aspects called conjunction. Conjunction is getting close.
Right.
And we'll discuss the other aspects as well as they become pertinent to our discussion.
So what do you think? Do you want to go on to, maybe, since we started with Aries and Jupiter, maybe we'll just go through Taurus now, since you're at the beginning of the zodiac?
Yeah,
and
we'll just
discuss-
give an introduction to the beginning of the sign. Yes, Taurus is a fixed sign.
Yes.
And Carrie will tell you more about Taurus.
Oh, well, okay. So the Taurus nature, I know I always get nervous about this. The Taurus nature they represent comfort. They represent the material possessions. Yes.
Aries is finding its essence and it's just consciousness being born. Taurus is having things. It's physical form.
It represents beauty.
Right. The comfort, the ability to control the outside environment so it is comfortable for them. In China, it's the snake, but it's ruled by the planet Venus.
Yes.
Venus, we call it the planet of love. Interestingly, you want to say anything more about Venus? As I have plenty to say about Venus.
Well, Venus. So, Venus is the planet of love, but it's also seductive. It also represents beauty and all of the things, just like with Jupiter. And it's also called the minor benefic.
And yet,
yes,
in astrology,
Aphrodite causes war.
Venus is warlike. Venus is the warlike planet.
Because you can
it has war as its outcome.
Because it can get petty.
Right. Mars is blamed for war.
Right.
But it is Venus that causes the war.
She's back there working the strings, civilizing Tarzan. Yeah.
And men fight over what? Over the female. And Venus is said to be ruler of the female, whereas Mars is ruler of the male. But let's not end there, because Mars also has another component which rules a feminine sign, just as Venus, it rules Taurus, which is a feminine sign, but it also rules a masculine sign. Now, what is meant by masculine and feminine? These simply are positive and negative polarities. Positive meaning an outward thrust. This is an individual that speaks his mind. He's out there. He's not ashamed or afraid. Feminine means inward thrust, where the thought or the idea is incorporated and it is a reflection before an action. And this is one who has sensation and feeling that goes along with everything. And that is the feminine is inward. It's, in other words, receptive
Right.
versus
It's the
emitting.
yin force, right? The yin is
One
internal, that's the womb, and the yang is
one
external.
is responsible for outward action, the other one is responsible for inward action. So where Mars is rugged and tough, and Martian ruled people tend to be rugged and tough, and they're like with no feeling. Venus people tend to be elegant and beautiful, and they want comfort, and they want everything smooth.
They're
And
snappy
they want
dressers, and yeah.
they want balance on the outside. They're usually good dancers. They're usually uh,
Yes.
very romantic in
Social
some ways,
niceties.
but their romance can be somewhat superficial. Keep in mind that every sign represents a particular energy type, but the energy type also has its complement. So while they are the lovers, they're also the ones that are responsible for causing trouble
They can
sometimes.
exploit. Yeah, they can become a little
Exactly.
exploitive.
Exactly.
So,
So you want to move on to the next sign?
uh,
Gemini would be the next
yeah,
sign.
yeah. You want to? Okay, we'll move on to
Well,
Gemini.
unless we have questions, we'll
Uh,
continue.
Yeah.
How much time do we have?
Let's see what time. I'm sorry. We're going to about 2 o'clock, so about 10 minutes.
Okay. So we'll probably end up with Gemini.
Okay.
You
So
want to talk about
let's
Gemini?
discuss Gemini. So Gemini is the opposite sign of Sagittarius. I am a big fan of Geminis myself.
Let's tell them why.
And right,
Gemini occupies the end of summer, the spring, and Sagittarius represents the end of autumn. And they're opposite, which means they're complementary.
right.
The opposite sign would usually be your marital sign, but it is not the one that's called marital sign. We'll get into that as we get further. Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Go ahead. You want to talk more
Okay.
about
Yes.
them?
So Gemini. What Gemini is? Obviously, Gemini is dualistic, but Sagittarius is also anything that is mutable is dualistic.
And the reason?
I don't know.
Mutable, well, you do know, but you're just not thinking of it. The reason it's called mutable, it's also called common, it's called dualistic, it's called contradictory, it's called transitory. There are a lot of names for the mutable. As
Right.
you can see, mutable is an interesting sign because it has duality. And when you get to Gemini, why is it dualistic? And the reason it is dualistic is because we have what they call the cardinal sign, which is the beginning of the season. So Aries would be the beginning of spring, it's cardinal. Taurus would be the middle of spring, and the sign that occupies the middle month, as there are only 3 months per season, the middle month of spring would be Taurus, so it's fixed. So May showers, Aries.
Right.
May showers, Aries, brings in May flowers, Taurus. When the sun goes in a fixed sign, we get the result of that position. So the May showers result in the May flowers, which is Taurus. Gemini is where the sun goes into a position where it leaves a fixed sign and it prepares for the new cardinal sign, which would be Cancer. So they are taking on two qualities. They're taking on the quality of the previous fixed, and they're taking on the qualities of the oncoming cardinal. So they have both qualities in their nature.
Yeah.
They can be fixed, stubborn, and they can be movable like the wind, like sign Aries. So that is what dualistic means. And that is why they're also depicted as two twins fighting each other. Because, and the thing is that there are four fixed signs, there are four cardinal signs, and there are four mutable signs. We will describe this at a later time. What is the difference between each of the mutable signs, each of the cardinal signs, and each of the fixed signs? There is a difference in how those qualities are expressed as the signs are changing. So you
So
want to
this
say
is a
more
planet.
about
This is a
Gemini?
planet. I'm not a planet. This is a sign. Communication is obviously emphasized. They're kind of. I consider them kind of like the sibling of the zodiac in a way. They're extraordinary with communication. Um, they drive themselves very mental. They're always thinking about what they like and what they don't like at the same time. They drive themselves nuts.
They're into conversation.
Right. Thinking can become
Speech.
obsessive. Right. It can become obsessive, like short circuited Mercury. And you kind of have to, the big challenge that Geminis have to learn is how to interrupt. Like, it's not the thought that you're having that you have to stop. It's the thinking that you're doing that you have to stop.
So it's Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury, represents the evasive planet. We never know what it's about. Many philosophers considered Mercury to be the representation of God. It appears one way and it is another way.
Right.
We think we're promised one thing and we get another thing.
That's right.
So with Gemini, it's always going to be a switch. And that seems to be the way the universe is built, that what appears is not really what is.
Right.
And that is Gemini. They simply express the moment. That is what they do. They express the differences between moments, not just one moment. And so they tend to switch on you. And sometimes you think that they're lying to you or they're trying to fool you. It's not that at all.
No.
It's that the Gemini sees they're enchanted by other things.
Yes.
We look at Gemini in China, it's the year of the horse. And what do we see with the horse? It's always running off in different directions.
Right.
It doesn't stay in one direction. It moves about. And that is Gemini, and that is Mercury. In some ways, it's genius. Gemini represents of intellect. It represents short stories, writings, short travels, but they're the communicators
And catalyzers.
They rule
Connecting
the
people.
hands, and we'll get into that with all the signs, which means touching and knowing the environment. And so brothers and sisters are under Gemini, which is what they can touch and know that's the same as they are, but there's a difference between them.
Even, I just have to say this because it's funny. Remember when everybody was talking about Donald Trump's small hands, what have you?
Right.
Right. He's
They
a
picked his
Gemini.
hand. They picked
Right.
his hands.
Went right for his hands.
Right. The hands are ruled by Gemini.
So things
And
really do
we have
come out.
stories about how we can make this stick out more.
Yeah, you see all kinds of, we'll have to organize more, but you see different little things like that. You're like, oh yeah, that's going to happen to a Gemini.
Well,
or that's going to happen to
our podcasts are not going to be regimented by a previous set of rules and items that we're going to discuss.
No,
we're going to be ad lib.
Well, this is right.
You're going to hear what comes from out of creation.
Right, inorganic. So so this is why the live readings, and then we'll also have more presentations and stuff.
Right.
I'm working on this weekend. So that we can also do presentations like education and kind of give fill people in on world events.
So in our next podcast, we'll discuss.
I guess we'll
start with Cancer.
We'll start with Cancer next.
Okay.
So I just wanted to.
We hope you enjoyed.
Yeah, I just wanted to one more time as we're ending this.
Tell the times and everything else.
Right. So,
live broadcasts will be on.
Oh yeah, every week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 1 p.m.
Live broadcasts.
We'll be doing live readings.
Live readings, I mean.
And this weekend, we're going to be making a presentation. So we haven't quite figured out which way we're going to go yet, but kind of the creative juices are flowing like
You're
crazy
watching
now.
us create the astrology that we know very deeply. And remember, because it's so complicated, you're starting to see. That is the benefit of watching the two of us. You start to see not only how we see things slightly different, or we add to what we are saying because we agree, and you start to see that. Imagine what other astrologers go to who don't agree with each other at all. At least Carrie and I have pretty much covered the subject matter fairly well in the same line of thinking. Because
there's never enough.
Because we try to adhere to the truth that stays constant. The truth that stays constant all the time.
Oh, hi JG, welcome. Yeah, we're getting toward the end, but did you have any questions for us? We're just kind of winging it anyway right now.
Well, winging it, we're giving you good knowledge.
Well, we're giving good information, obviously, but
we're not winging anything. No siree. No, I'm giving you over 50 years of my experience.
So, by the way, you can see, we'll go into this another time. Michael has more Saturn influence. He's much more serious than I am.
Right.
And I'm all over the place. Always
she's more jovial. She's Jupiter rule.
Jupiter, yes.
I'm Mars
jovial,
rule. I'm a Mars
Jupiter,
rule. I go in a straight path, even if it's the wrong path at times. But that's part of living.
Yeah, you just have to keep feeding Saturn good food. That's what they need.
Well, whatever.
So, well, this will conclude today our presentation. We will be back again, like I said, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 1 p.m. So please
But we will
join
have
us.
other podcasts that you can view if you wish. As we go on, we'll also give other readings where we don't have live questions.
And one day we're going to be talking about the early days. So the early days of our production. So
Okay.
thank you
Well,
for
we hope you
joining us.
enjoyed. Goodbye.
Yeah, have a blessed weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.
Gotta find out who's been calling. They're calling both phones on my phone.
Yeah.